Herman Edwards was the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs for a while before becoming an announcer on one of the NFL networks. And he was asked about his thoughts on teamwork. And he said, "This is what I think about teamwork. When you come to play for a team that I am coaching on, you are going to play for the name on the side of the helmet and not for the name on the back of the jersey." And that was his philosophy. If you're going to play for this team, you're going to be playing first and foremost for the name of the team. You're not going to be playing for your name on the back. And one of the problems that we see in the book of Judges is that Ephraim wanted to play for their name. They didn't want to work together with others for the glory of God. And we see in this chapter the dangers of victory without unity. The whole book is about the danger of not having spiritual leadership, not having God as your king, not having spirit-filled, biblically wise people judging you and leading you. And boy, do we see it in every single chapter in Judges. But let's pick up the action. Judges chapter 12. By the way, I apologize for the camera. I had an awesome camera with my Facebook portal, but for some reason, Facebook no longer supports Facebook Live on the Facebook portal. So now I'm back to using the iPad. And the iPad just doesn't have the awesome camera angles that the portal had. So I'm working on that situation. We're going to step our game up. I'm looking at options. But it's a bummer that I paid $149.99 for the Facebook portal, and 2 months later they said, oops, we're not supporting that feature anymore. So I'm looking at different options. But Judges chapter 12. Jephthah is still judge and ruler over Gilead and Ephraim. And the men of Ephraim called out their forces, crossed over to Zaphon. They're coming after Jephthah, and we saw in Judges chapter 11 that the Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah. He crossed Gilead and Manasseh, and he advanced against the Ammonites and won a tremendous victory. But now the Ephraimites are mad because they didn't play a role in it. They're jealous that they didn't get enough credit, and so we see the dangers of victory without unity. Why did you go to fight the Ammonites without calling us to go with you? We're going to burn down your house over your head. Holy man, you think maybe you're a little bit angry there? I mean, Jephthah did a great work with the people that supported him, the reckless adventurers and others who came to his side. And the victory wasn't just for Jephthah and the Gileadites. The victory was for all Israel, because everybody benefits when you get the Goyish out of there, when you get the Gentile rulers gone, when you get the Ammonites gone, and you can rule yourself and have freedom. Everybody should benefit from that. But no. The Ephraimites are jealous because they wanted the credit rather than giving God the glory. We got to be careful of that attitude, where we want the glory rather than giving God the glory, where we want the credit rather than giving God the credit. And verse 2, Jephthah answered. Now, it's interesting, before I give you Jephthah's answer, Ephraim, they pulled this stuff before, right? With Gideon. They were like, well, why didn't you call us out? And Gideon was a much different kind of person than Jephthah. He was much more diplomatic. And Gideon was like, well, what was I able to accomplish more than you? You joined the fight, and you chased those Midianites all the way back to their land, and you did a whole bunch of great stuff that I didn't do. And so he made them feel good about themselves, and that averted a war. But Jephthah didn't have those diplomatic, savvy skills that you often look for in leadership. Jephthah said, I and my people, he's already separating himself from the Ephraimites. My people were engaged in a great struggle with the Ammonites, and although I called, you didn't save me out of their hands. Where were you when I needed you? When I saw you wouldn't help, I took my life in my hands and crossed over to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gave me the victory over them. So he's not like Gideon at all. He's not like saying, well, God did a great work through you. Jephthah's like, no, man, the credit should go to me. And so we're going to have problems. When you have victory without unity, it's going to hurt the team. You've heard about that in sports where you got teammates going, and it destroys the team. I kind of see that happening here. Now, verse 3, the Lord gave me the victory. Now, why have you come up today to fight me? Jephthah, instead of being diplomatic, verse 4, he called together the men of Gilead and fought against Ephraim. They had a little civil war going on. And this is not going to be the last civil war in Judges. There's going to be another awful civil war in Judges 19 and 20 and the start of chapter 21. The Gileadites struck down the Ephraimites because they had said, you Gileadites are renegades from Ephraim and Manasseh. Even though they're from the same territory, there was that rivalry. Kind of like Michigan and Michigan State in the same state, or Ohio State and Michigan. I'm trying to think of some famous rivalries. Bears, Packers, they're neighbors. That's what you got going on here. This is like Bears versus Packers, same general area, rivalry. You Gileadites are renegades from Ephraim and Manasseh. The Gileadites captured the fords of the Jordan, leading to Ephraim. And when you control the back and forth, you control commerce, you control travel. And whenever a survivor of Ephraim said, let me cross over, the men of Gilead asked him, are you an Ephraimite? If he said no, they said, all right, say Shibboleth. And if he said Sibboleth, because he could not pronounce the word correctly, they seized him and killed him at the fords of the Jordan. So it was their accent that gave them away. And even in Hebrew today, you've got the letter Sheen and the letter Seen, and they look alike, but one's pronounced sh and one's pronounced s. And sometimes some Jewish people can't say sh, they can only say s. And that's what's going on in this situation. And if your speech gave you away, you were caught. Many years later, the Apostle Peter, his speech is going to betray him. Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. So, Matthew 12:36, therefore I tell you that men will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every careless word they have spoken. For by your words you shall be justified, and by your words you shall be condemned. And so if they revealed that they were lying, that because they couldn't say the word correctly, they were seized and killed. 42,000 Ephraimites were killed at that time. All because Ephraim was so stuck up that they wanted the credit. You see what too much pride and arrogance will get you? Verse 7, Jephthah led Israel 6 years. He didn't have a long judgeship. When you think about Gideon, what was he in there for? Almost 40 years. You had other judges that were in there much longer. Jephthah, I think because of his arrogance, because of his pride, because of his burliness and worldliness, he didn't have a long time in there. It says, then Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried in a town in Gilead. And then we have some inconsequential, am I saying that word right? Inconsequential judgeships, beginning in verse 8 through 15. After him, Ibzan of Bethlehem led Israel. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters. He gave his daughters away in marriage to those outside his clan. And for his sons, he brought in 30 young women as wives from outside his clan. The worldly thing to do was realpolitik. You establish your power and strength in the world by forming political alliances based on romantic dalliances with men or women from other countries. And that's what this judge was trying to do. He's like, the other judges didn't have common sense. They didn't try to forge relationships with these pagan nations. Well, I'm going to do that by marrying my kids to their kids and their kids to my kids. And without the help of God, without trusting in the word of God, I'm going to do this myself. Realpolitik. You know what? He only led Israel for 7 years. God was not putting up with that stuff for too long. He was buried in Bethlehem. Years later, a much greater judge would come out of Bethlehem, David. And years later, a much greater judge than David would come out of Bethlehem, Jesus. But this judge, nuh-uh. Verse 11, after him, Elon the Zebulunite led Israel 10 years. I kind of like that God is allowing judges from all the different tribes to have a chance at it. I think that's good. On the surface of the name. Verse 12, then Elon died. It doesn't say nothing he did. He just said he led and then he died. And was buried in Aijalon in the land of Zebulun. So these are relatively, as far as we're aware of, inconsequential judges. After him, Abdon, son of Hillel, led Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys. And that's how he showed everybody how wealthy and blessed he was. And it does say in Psalm 127, verse 3, that sons are a heritage from the Lord, children a reward from him. And he's just showing off by having all his kids riding on donkeys behind him. But you know what? He had 70 sons and grandsons. He only led 8 years. Then Abdon, son of Hillel, died and was buried at Pirathon in Ephraim in the hill country of the Amalekites. And so what Israel needs is somebody who will unite the country, unify the nation, bring the people together so that they can be focused on God. When is that going to happen? Well, tomorrow we're going to meet a new judge and see if he's any different at all. His name is Samson. We'll deal with that tomorrow. But in the meantime, I hope you see the importance of a team being unified. Don't you think it's important for a church to be unified? I mean, we're not going to agree on everything. Some people are going to want pink walls. Some are going to want beige walls in the offices of a church. I'm just making stuff up off the top of my head now. But we're not going to agree on everything. But we should disagree agreeably on the small things and agree strongly on the main things, on Jesus Christ being Lord, on the importance of looking to him and worshiping him and giving him the glory and him the credit, and not trying to hog the credit for ourselves, but to give praise to God. I'll never forget the time years ago when Aaron Rodgers sat out the last game of the season against the Detroit Lions, and I think Flynn, I forget his first name, but Flynn was stepping in as quarterback, and he set a Packer record by throwing 6 touchdowns in the same game. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers has ever thrown more than 5 in a game. I think this guy set a record. What's his name? Doug Flynn? 6 touchdowns in one game, and when he set the record on the 6th touchdown, they showed the camera on Rodgers, and Rodgers wasn't all jealous. He was smiling and clapping and applauding him because he recognized that Flynn was doing it for the team and not for the name on the back of the jersey. Let us unite together in our desire to see Christ glorified in all the earth. Jesus loves you. This I know, for the Bible tells me so. You guys have an awesome day. We'll be back tomorrow. Also tomorrow at 11:15 a.m. I get my PET scan results and I find out what stage my lymphoma is at. I'm hoping it's stage 0, that they're like, you know what, we couldn't find it. That doctor must have got it all out of there. So we're praying for the best. You guys have an awesome day. Bye-bye.